first off, and you said this earlier, Walt, and we said it during the panel too, but all innovations, all technology, these are tools for humans. This is here to enable, to uplift, to enhance humans and move us forward. And none of us can predict the future. Even our predictive models can't 100% predict the future. But I'll say that if we look into recent history, so I'm 45. I just had a birthday a couple of weeks ago. I remember before the internet. I wasn't in the workforce, but I do remember a time before the internet. I remember before smartphones. I can remember what life was like before and after these other sorts of real disruptive technologies. And I feel like we've said the word disruptive so much in the last 10 years that like it's almost lost its meaning. But in these situations, we didn't have a net loss of opportunity for people to work, for people to engage with the technology. What we saw was new industries, right? New types of technology, new ways for people to work. Blockchain would not exist if it weren't for the internet, right? Like there's brand new things that come out of these technologies. And the only thing that's safe to assume, I think, is that things will change, and we all need to be ready to adapt, to see what's possible and see what tools are out there, and find ways for us to use the tools to enhance our work rather than allow the tools to replace our work. That's the way I feel about that.
You may know the American Railway Engineering and Maintenance of Way Association, or AREMA, as the, quote, keepers of the manuals. You may know them as the, quote, people behind the largest annual railroad conference in North America. Heck, you may not know about AREMA at all. This podcast is designed, no pun intended, to change your view of who AREMA is and how AREMA has changed the trajectory of many railway careers over its 100-plus year history. Welcome to Platform Chats with your host, Walt Bleser, where he takes a moment to discuss the impacts AREMA has had on the very people who are proud to be called members. Are you ready to roll with AREMA?
Unabridged Structures is a proud supporter of AREMA and Platform Chats, specializing in innovative and practical solutions for railway and transportation infrastructure. Unabridged Structures brings clarity and creativity to complex structural challenges. Learn more at unabridgedstructures.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Platform Chats. I'm your host, Walt Bleser, and wildly enough, we are on episode number 47, 46, 48, something like that. I know there's a ghost episode somewhere in my list that never quite got recorded, but we'll get to that one. Sometimes people have to go do other things. First time to do this at Platform Chats, we have decided to host a podcast as a follow-up to our Emerging Technologies panel that we hosted at AREMA in Indy. As many of you know, the Emerging Technologies panel is actually the birth child of Platform Chats. So Platform Chats started in 5 or so years ago as a podcast to reach out to a whole new host of members, as well as non-members, to potentially get interest in joining AREMA. And after a couple of years of that, there was a request to do one live, which that then turned into the genesis of the Emerging Technologies panel, where we could do just a live panel discussion. So similar but different. And our first one was in 2022, I believe, in Denver. And that was on a Wednesday morning, and we had a decent sized room. It wasn't the world's largest room, but we then have a lot of requests to AREMA that, hey, people liked it. They liked interacting with the panel. They liked asking live questions and getting live answers instead of just being talked to, like many of our presentations that we do. Very communication 1.0. We're trying to do more of a 2.0. And believe it or not, this year we got moved to the Monday session. We were given a full hour, and we were given a very large room, and it was an honor to be able to moderate this panel. I'm just really, really cool thing that we can do this, and that the reception has been so positive. So thank you all for your feedback and for pushing AREMA headquarters to do things that you guys want to hear about. And so this year we did AI. We have done in the past, we've done battery electric locomotives. We've done hydrogen power. We've done all kinds of interesting stuff, that the goal being listeners and those that are in the audience can think about it and not have the answers. And frankly, the people on the stage don't have all the answers. And that's the point. That's the whole point. We like to play in a space where no one has all the answers, because we very much want to get people excited about trying to figure things out. There was a really cool advertisement during Sunday Night Football last night that I was watching with something about how this is a horrible time to be a problem because there's a lot of individuals out there that are trying to quote unquote find their problem to solve it. And that's inspiring to people like my kids and hopefully a lot of people that are even listening to this to figure out what that problem is, and is there a way to apply technologies of today to solve it. And so with that, I did bring back our two panelists. Both Jason and Doron are here from RailVision and X-Track Object Computing. I'm going to have them do a brief introduction for those of you that did not sit through the panel. We are not going to do the full 20-minute PowerPoints, but they'll each do a brief introduction as to kind of who they are in the world and why they're in the roles that they're in, and heck, why they're even interested in trying to apply AI to the rail industry. And then what we're going to do is we've got so many questions that were submitted through the app. And we're going to use that as the basis of today's podcast. Again, this is very different from what we've done in the past. And we'll start with Jason. Jason, if you want to go ahead and do an introduction, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Walt, for inviting me here today to talk to you, and then also for the invitation on the panel. That was an amazing experience for me, and so I'm so thankful for all of that. My name is Jason Schindler. I've been working at Object Computing for about 13 years, and I have about 20 years in the technology and innovation industry. Object Computing is a technology consultancy company, and that's really where my work has been for the last 20 years. So I've spent 20 years helping organizations of all shapes and sizes identify and adopt the emerging technologies that's going to help move their business forward. I've done that in a number of industries. For the last 5 years, I've been working with the X-Track platform, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit more in a moment, perhaps. But the X-Track platform is a platform specific to rail. It brings AI and ML insights into like operational and safety efficiencies within rail, and that's why I'm here today.
Outstanding. And we'll get to your products here in a second, Jason. So thank you for the quick introduction. Doron is our other guest who is with RailVision. Doron's based in Israel. Doron, are you on there?
I hope. Can you hear me, guys?
Absolutely.
Good. So, again, thank you as well for joining this podcast. And again, I had a great time with you guys at the panel. It was very interesting, and I'm really happy on the opportunity to continue this on the panel. I'm Doron Cohadier. I'm the VP Business Development here at RailVision. Actually, I came from the world of AI. In my previous roles, I used to be working in the defense industry, the automotive, and now the rail. So I saw it in different areas, in different perspectives. And, I truly believe that AI has a lot to bring to the railway industry. We're going to talk in a minute as well about RailVision. RailVision basically provides very unique sensors to the rail industry in the field of operational efficiency, safety, but we'll talk about it in a second. So I'm very, very proud here to join this podcast.
So if we stay on the theme of find your problem, which I really enjoyed that theme. I got to figure out who's behind that advertisement. So again, entrepreneurs, startups, etc., they all start with a problem statement, right? We all look at something in the industry and say, I think we can do this better or more efficient or safer. I'm going to go to you, Jason. What was your problem statement for what you're doing at Xtrack?
It was really about finding ways to bring more modern data insight tools to the rail industry. And we started off with a single problem, which was identifying the root cause of unscheduled braking events by consuming PTC device logs and building an ML model to read the logs, identify the root cause, and then we have a human in the loop check at the end where if an individual feels that diagnosis is wrong, they can provide reasons for what it should be, and then we retrain the model based on that information, and then the next version of it would include those things as well. So that's where we got started, was that very specific use case, and that was very helpful because it gave us the opportunity to work directly with folks in the rail industry instead of kind of a lot of people, when they're building tools, they're also imagining problems instead of, to your point, finding them. So they imagine a problem and then they go solve that, and then they find out there's no customers, right? Because it's not actually a problem, or they didn't imagine it correctly, or whatever. A strong belief of ours is we need to partner with the people that have the problems, be able to confirm them, know how to best solve them, and how to best put our solution out in order to where it can be consumed and impactful.
Outstanding. Yes. And I wholeheartedly agree with that approach. It's coming up with a problem that doesn't exist could lead you to not a very long lasting startup. Doron?
A lot of work, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you at RailVision? What did you, how did you envision the issue in the rail industry and how you were going to apply AI?
Well, again, RailVision was founded to solve a very big problem. There's a huge amount of accidents worldwide in the rail industry. Just to give you some figure facts, in 2024, there were almost 1,000 rail fatalities, almost 7,000 non-fatal rail injuries, more than 1,000 derailments. So it's a big problem, not only obviously in the US, worldwide, and I even mentioned, I think, on the panel itself, that the AAR president at the time, a few years ago, said that every 3 hours in the US, a person or a vehicle is struck by train. So this is what we're trying to solve. But not only we're trying to solve it, we understand that one of the big challenges is the human cause behind this problem. Either the limited eyesight of a human being, the limited human resources. In some areas, they're not enough, for example, train engineers or drivers, so they work longer hours. So, putting more load on these individuals. Harsh environment, snow, fog, rain, loss of attentions. So there are many, many problems coming from the human cause. And what we're trying to assist and to come with we're bringing AI in order to solve this big problem.
So it feels very much like a tool in the toolbox, though, right? We're not trying to replace folks. We're trying hard to help give them necessary tools to make their jobs easier, better, faster. Is that a true statement?
Yes. This is
okay.
From our perspective, yes, it's a true statement. We want to actually, human beings are limited in what their abilities. We're trying to, increase their abilities. Okay, see beyond what a human person can do in order to assist them to do it in more safer, operationally more efficient. Yes, so it's quite a true statement here.
And Jason, you did a really good job at the panel setting the stage before we go any further, there's a lot of questions here about AI. Okay. And when we use that term, it's very, very broad. And when I think of AI, I think of anything from machine learning. I think of neural networks. When people hear that term, heck, I think some people just start thinking about data centers.
Right.
So, and video chips and et cetera, and semiconductors. And so when we use the term AI, could you just maybe give us a 20,000 foot overview of, your view of what AI is. If you say you're at the cocktail party having a conversation with someone who knows nothing about it, and then let's drill down into how we're using it or applying it here. That'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So, AI itself is a broad, like it's a umbrella field of study, right? So it's been around since the 50s, and it's really focused on designing systems which can mimic certain aspects of human intelligence, and that like AI, artificial intelligence, that's really as an umbrella term what it is. It's in our vernacular a lot right now. It's a very buzzword thing for good reason. Um, but ML, or machine learning, is a specific kind of AI, and it uses like statistical models and algorithms to like predict elements of future unseen data based on training data that it's already received. So an example, I don't recall if this is the one I used at the panel, but if you wanted software that could take an image and tell you whether or not the image contains a duck, you could train an ML model on a lot of images that do contain ducks, a lot that don't. And after sufficient training, you would have a model that you're pretty confident if I show it an image it's never seen before, it would be able to correctly identify if there's a duck in that image. That's based on training data, and then it's that aspect of unseen data that makes it ML. That uses something called deep learning, which I won't go too far into, except to say that deep learning, that's where your neural network comes in, and it's that technology that has enabled Gen AI. And I think Gen AI, when folks say AI, Gen AI is basically where they start thinking. So it's short for generative AI, and it's any AI that starts to create new content where content didn't exist before. And one of the big uses of that right now, if you think about ChatGPT or Gemini or whichever LLM models you're using, it's creating human speech or human language in order to interact with us from nothing. And so that's generative AI. And I think when folks think about AI, at least right now, a lot of them are thinking about generative AI, but it really is a big umbrella, and it could mean a lot of things. Is that helpful?
That is really helpful. And yes, I think AI is at a point now where, similar to the battery electric train conversation we had, you can relate to the problems as a consumer no differently than a large business, right? When you go to if you're deciding between an fully electric vehicle versus an ICE, internal combustion engine, which is classically what we've been driving, right? You sit down and you think, all right, well, okay, if I'm going to go on a long road trip, what does that mean versus if I'm going to use it around town, blah, blah, blah. You can kind of relate, right? It's no
Sure.
different than when we're thinking about that with battery electric trains. And right now, ChatGPT, my wife and I, family, have a trip upcoming, and believe it or not, ChatGPT's pretty much created an itinerary, and it's told us where we should go and when for the kids at what ages they are. It's phenomenal, but that's how consumers are using it, right? And Doron, you were famously talking about garbage in, garbage out. Is this a good point where you'd want to chime in on this discussion?
Yeah, I mean, AI is a very big umbrella of a lot of things underneath it. But at the lower level, the foundation is the data. Okay, and again, data is, as you mentioned, garbage in, garbage out. If the data, the lowest point here, the foundation, you provide a low quality data, you'll get low quality AI in the end of the day. And how do we actually, in our company, create high quality? So first of all, use very, very powerful sensors. Okay, so high quality images with a lot of pixels and a lot of sensitivity. We use diverse inputs. Okay, we're not using only visible cameras. We use thermal cameras as well. So when you have diverse inputs, you increase the quality of the data. The quantity of the data, we use a lot of data. Okay, we ran more than 1 million kilometers of rail already, collecting endless amounts of data out there in order to train our different models. And the diversity of conditions, we do it in daytime, nighttime, in Europe, in the US, in the Far East, you name it, in shunting yards, in main lines. So the more you get high quality data of image quality, diverse inputs, quantity and diversity, you get a very, very good bucket of data in which you can train the machine learning and therefore provide a much higher level of performance of AI.
I think this is a perfect time to jump in with some of the questions because I think the stage is set. I think that there are a lot of questions about the data. And so that's why I want to chime in here because garbage in, garbage out, quality data, etc. But we still live in a time where I firmly believe there never is enough data to be perfect. In 2016, the company I was running, we had a monitoring company. We were using accelerometer data, and we were training neural networks to identify a certain type of data image or response. And man, you might think you've got that thing trained just right, and then here comes something else that's just a little bit different. And so that's one of the big questions we have here. And we are this time going to try to do my best to follow the number of questions that were voted with the highest number of votes. So this was the highest number of votes for real. I know that there was some folks in the audience that noticed I was not seeing all that when we were in the middle of our presentation. The questions were not floating up properly, but this question is for both of you. We know that we don't yet have 100% accurate AI models. What is the approach of your company to address these inaccuracies? False positives, false negatives. Do you keep the human in the loop for QA? This was pointed towards Jason, but I definitely think this is a question for everybody. So Jason, if you want to start, that'd be great.
I'd be happy to. Yeah. And it certainly is like a general purpose question. And it's also, this really isn't specific to Rail. I think there's a lot of people asking themselves this question right now. And I think it's important to remember that AI itself and the models that we're building, these are tools. There's other innovations that have been in similar spaces previously, and those things aren't always accurate either. So AI is not human, right? And also humans themselves aren't perfect. So how do we approach like potential inaccuracies? Well, the first is kind of knowledge that as you're tuning a model, you're tuning it for specific outputs or specific predictions. And you can in part of your training decide what aspects are important to you and which ones are least important to you. And so if you're thinking like, how am I going to predict everything, the reality is you're probably not, or at least not very well. And each one of those elements has a different kind of level of accuracy that's going to be associated with it. And tuning the model, you're going to optimize for one or two things and not try to optimize for everything. So how do we address them? We do the same thing we would do with any other technology. We test the heck out of it. We test it with simulated data. We test it with real data. We do we're big believers in keeping the human in the loop until we come to a point where we feel really good about this model and its accuracy against the real world. And in some cases that can be at a terminal in a system, somebody sees an output in the model and says, no, I don't think that's right. And they give it feedback. In some ways, so when we talked about like crossing sightlines on the panel and predicting when vegetation will grow at what areas, it's visual inspections, right? It's having folks go out and do snapshots of what they're already doing now in order to inspect these crossings and give feedback into that model, making sure that we have it right. So it's tested a lot, have high standards, and keep humans engaged, right? It's not a set and forget situation, and I don't think it ever should be.
And I know we got like 60 questions, so we're going to try to bust through as many of these as possible. That was a great answer. And I think the reason I really wanted to start with that one is that's an overarching answer and question, right? Another question here was the rail signal industry historically is very risk averse. And with the potential of AI integration into train control, how is the industry managing some of the faults that happen in AI data sets like data contamination, concept drift, model collapse, that sort of thing? That also ties in with another question. I'm trying to group some of these together, which was directly for Doron. Does the system interact with positive train control systems? So I would say those two are very similar to you. Doron, I'm going to kick that one to you unless you want some help.
No, I think it's fine. First, trying to address the first question again, I think by training these AI models with different types of, I mentioned, for example, different types of cameras that we use, for example. Therefore, you use different types of inputs in order to improve the performance. So you reduce the contamination of these set data sets that you get. As obviously Jason mentioned, there's always at this stage always a man in the loop. Okay, there's always a human being in the loop. And by the way, again, we need to understand AI is not a revolution, it's an evolution. So you start from a certain point, it's far from perfect, and it keeps getting better and better. Through these, steps, there's always a human being that tests all the time. But then, again, this is not enough. So we are bringing, in order to reduce the data contamination, we do a lot of testing. We put the human loop inside. We use different inputs. There's a different angle to it as well from a cyber perspective. Okay, you can contaminate data by tapping onto it and changing the data as well. So this is another very important thing as you go into AI and high levels of use of AI is really increase the cybersecurity aspects as well from a contamination perspective. And we give a lot of detail into these things as well. So we put a lot of measures to reduce these things. So I hope I gave a very 30,000. Yeah, Jason, go on, please, if you want to add.
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt it, but I did want to just chime in here. I'm really glad, Doron, that you said a couple times that it's like multiple dispersed data sets integrated together that really kind of level this stuff up, because I 100% agree with that, and I actually think that's more the immediate thing that we need to work through in order to make the best use of this technology is integrating and bringing in those multiple data sets together to make sure we have the best understanding of reality as possible. The other thing I want to chime in on here, and it relates to the last question too, is we need to be before we start on this, we need to understand what success is and how to measure it, right? And so we need to be continuously measuring what success looks like, and then taking every iteration of that model, every future version, and watching those metrics come back so that we can continue to know that we're hitting the marks, so that we don't have this like concept drift sort of problem, where if we keep our eye on the ball in terms of where success is, then we can make sure that all future revisions are still hitting the mark. And then if they do start to drift, we can reel them in.
So, just yes. Let's get to like a yes no. Does the RailVision system integrate with PTC and or the signal system as of today?
As of today, no.
Okay.
I know it's a yes or no question, just a very quick one. We complement PTC. Okay, PTC is a signal system. It's a blind system, and the whole idea is to know where the other trains are and to avoid any collision. We live in a world. We live in a world that there's much more on the rails. There's things can fall. Trees, branches, a rock. Crossing people, crossing cars. You name it. Okay. So we complement it. At this point of time, we do not, talk to the PTC, but we hear from our clients that it's a good idea. So we are thinking over internally how to do so. So yes, in the future, I believe that yes, we will be part of the PTC and will be an additional layer to what the PTC provides today.
Jason, your system?
So we do have a module now that reads in PTC device logs for that unscheduled braking event root cause analysis. We don't have any current integrations that interact, especially in a real-time aspect, with PTC.
Okay, fair. And this is actually going to pile on to what was just said. I enjoyed this question of when implementing AI in a safety critical use case where a single failure is unacceptable, how do you comfortably conclude that a model is ready to be moved from development to production? And I think that ties directly into what Doron said about evolution, not revolution, as well as what you said, Jason, about data sets and testing. So are there certain thresholds that can be discussed, or are we still trying to figure that out?
There's always thresholds. Actually, we tend to think about ML and predictions as like a yes no thing, as a binary thing. In reality, a lot of these models are a sliding scale of confidence, right? And if we want to be very protective, we can be more conservative on when we flip the switch and say, okay, I think this needs to be dealt with, or it needs to be inspected, or just depending on the model that's being used and how that's going on. And then the other thing is we need to be thorough in our testing and our validation, including human validation. So it kind of ties into what I was saying a moment ago. Before we even start, we need to understand what success is, right? So we don't find success. We identify what we believe it is, and we identify how to measure it, and then we apply that measurement to all the work that we do. And so when is it good to move it from development to production? When we're feeling good about that success metric, and then how do we mitigate against risks when it comes to like no failures allowed, keeping humans in the loop for as long as we need to, or any other fail safes that are already in the system, to make sure that that the net result is a positive one.
There's been a lot of questions in here, and I'll give this to you, Doron, to kick off if you'd like. There's been a lot of questions just about data ownership, litigation. I know we covered this briefly in the panel. I think there's what are the legal ramifications of missing something, or who owns the data? Do you guys want to talk about that at 10,000 feet? I mean, I don't know if we're there yet as an industry, but
I'll touch it if it's very, very briefly. From our aspect, we have two sets of products. Okay, one that sits and provides real-time alerts to the engineer, to the driver. Okay, and basically he gets real-time alerts on a computer that sits within the cabin itself. Okay, it is recorded as well, like a DVR on the computer itself. So basically, the data is owned completely by the operator. In addition, the other product, we didn't talk about too much about our products, but we have a complementary product of operational web application. Okay, that basically logs all the incidents we collected. So it shoots it out to a cloud. Now, a cloud here, it makes life easier as well. We can put it on any cloud, either our cloud and provide the inputs to the client, and if necessary, he can put it on his own cloud. So basically, on the two types of products that we have, it's completely owned by the operator or the customer himself. So we're not even touching the data.
Yeah, that matches our experience as well in terms of like who owns the data. For the most part, whomever collects it generally owns it and then maintains that ownership of it. We'll pull it into our pipelines in our system in order to derive the insights, and the insights are generally owned by the party as well. It's the models and the processing in the middle that we focus on for ownership. And then in terms of the other, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, not really prepared to give like legal legal advice around that sort of stuff. But I do think it's important to know if there's something that's potentially dangerous that we can do something about. I'll just say that.
I think this question dovetails as well for Doron. What has been the regulatory acceptance from the different countries with enhancing or augmenting what the trained engineer can see? And I would even go so far as to expand that based on the conversation we've been having around regulatory acceptance. Are you seeing different countries responding to this technology in a different way?
Let me start with the US. Okay, the US, slowly we hear more at the NTSB talking about, recommendation and start using collision avoidance systems. Okay, it's not a regulation. If it would have been a regulation in the US, I presume our life will be much easier. If it's a regulation, they need the product. We're kind of at the point that we're actually educating the market with our technology. So regulation is not there yet, but we see not only in the US, the more and more huge accidents worldwide that could be avoided, but not only the big ones, even the small ones. Okay, the ones that you hit a switch or you have a derailment, even if there's no one hurt. Okay, so I think slowly, the rail industry is starting to understand the value of technology and how AI, for example, can bring a lot of value to the customer. But again, there's no regulations as of yet in comparison, for example, to the automotive industry. In the automotive industry today, when you buy a car, you have ADAS products on the car, similar to what we do. Today, this is part of what you have because it's already regulated. I do believe it will be, and it started already because the NTSB are pushing it. I presume the next stage, hopefully the FRA will recommend it to the operators, and slowly it will move, hopefully, towards regulating it because there's a lot of potential. Again, I mentioned earlier how we can help the engineer. An engineer can see a few hundred meters. Or a few hundred yards. I can extend what he can see to 1.2 miles. I can show him in pitch dark like it was daylight. I can show them switch positions where they are and if they're faulty. I can do so many things here. So there's a lot of things that we can add and assist the driver. And I think the drive behind it from a regulation perspective is all the accidents and the value that the operators are starting to understand, the return on investment they can get with such a technology by reducing the operational expenses and all the accidents they have and everything.
There's been several questions, and this can go to both of you about I mean, again, we covered this briefly in the panel, autonomy, or basically the elimination of the engineers operating the trains. Do the two of you believe that we're headed towards using this technology to eliminate jobs, support jobs? Let's hit the elephant in the room about jobs. Who wants to take that one?
I'll start if that's all right, Doron.
Yeah.
So, first off, and you said this earlier, Walt, and we said it during the panel too. But all innovations, all technology, these are tools for humans. This is here to enable, to uplift, to enhance humans and move us forward. And none of us can predict the future. Even our predictive models can't 100% predict the future. But I'll say that if we look into recent history, so I'm 45. I just had a birthday a couple of weeks ago. I remember before the internet. I wasn't in the workforce, but I do remember a time before the internet. I remember before smartphones. I can remember what life was like before and after these other sorts of real disruptive technologies. And I feel like we've said the word disruptive so much in the last 10 years that like it's almost lost its meaning. But in these situations, we didn't have a net loss of opportunity for people to work, for people to engage with the technology. What we saw was new industries, right? New types of technology, new ways for people to work. Blockchain would not exist if it weren't for the internet, right? Like there's brand new things that come out of these technologies. And the only thing that's safe to assume, I think, is that things will change, and we all need to be ready to adapt, to see what's possible and see what tools are out there, and find ways for us to use the tools to enhance our work rather than allow the tools to replace our work. That's the way I feel about that.
I love that whole soundbite. That was fantastic. Yeah, I don't think anyone here is setting out to eliminate the jobs. I think that both of you have been pretty upfront about the problem statements that you found. And frankly, both of your problem statements are around loss of life and eliminating loss of life and increasing safety. And it's not about, I think oftentimes people immediately think, well, you're going to eliminate this job. Well, what more often than not, it's not eliminated. That person might go somewhere else to do something slightly different because they have a skill set and they have knowledge that they're bringing with them. Doron, did you want to pile on that? Because multiple people were asking that question.
Yeah. Again, I think I'm tapping to what Jason said. Again, we're not here to replace the human being. We're here to improve the performance, or making their lives easier, improving the performance. Now, again, in some areas, by the way, I mentioned that on the panel as well. We see this outside of the US, an HR problem, a human resource problem, being that they don't have enough people to fill in the gaps from, for example, drivers or engineers that need to be on the train. And I've seen this, by the way, in other areas, not only in the rail industry. So we're moving forward towards the future whereby there won't be enough people to accommodate, these jobs. So the areas in which where they are looking at autonomy are coming from a different perspective. They don't have enough people or they don't have the people to accommodate these jobs. But again, I think at this stage today, we're very far. I mentioned AI is an evolution, not a revolution. We don't have an autonomous car. When I joined my previous company, they said, and that was almost 10 years ago, next year, we'll have full of autonomous cars. 10 years almost have passed. We're far from it. So it's not there. Industry is talking a little bit. By the way, when you talk about autonomy, PTC is autonomy. Okay, it's a part of autonomy. So it's small building blocks that help increase operational efficiency, safety, but they're here to help. They're not here to replace. Okay, so
yeah, I agree. And I just wanted to pile on to what you said. I mean, 2015, 2016, I remember a lot of people saying that drones were going to replace bridge inspectors. Like, there will be no more bridge inspectors because there's drones that are going to live in little boxes that sit on the abutments and the piers. And every once in a while they wake up and they fly around the bridge and then they go back to sleep. I haven't seen that. Maybe you guys have. I don't know what movie it's in. But what we have seen, you might start with a pie in the sky idea like that. But usually what I've seen historically is things come from that pie in the sky idea that are actually tangible. So, for example, drones, maybe they're not doing that, but the industry's done a really good job of figuring out what drones are good for. Right? And they're being used as such. And I think it's similar almost every technology. You've got to have some guy has to come up with some crazy idea that is at the top of the tree that gets the tree shaking to drop out some pretty cool stuff, right? Yeah. And I don't even know if that was a good example or analogy using the tree, but I think Jason's smiling, so I think he's following what I'm saying here. So I'm going to
absolutely.
And Jason, there was a specific question for you here. And as we want to kind of wrap this up,
sure.
Railroads and state highway departments share the responsibility for ensuring grade crossings are safe. What actions have been taken to introduce this technology to the highway community?
Yeah, so we've actually been reaching out to some state DOT folks trying to figure out how to best work that in. It's a very regulated space. And so getting in there and finding the right people who can, enact change is problematic. Is my connection blinking a little?
Nope.
Okay,
no,
great.
Good.
Yeah, so we've been doing reach outs. We're still in the early stages of that, of trying to get that sort of collaboration across the industries, and that's crossings. It's kind of funny in that, like, those are in the physical world, and in this model, where those interactions kind of lay between the roads and the rail. But the question is absolutely right. They are a key figure in the maintenance of those.
I had a couple more questions I do want to get. I thought this one was interesting because it was just different. Given the accelerating emergence of disruptive technologies and the pronounced generational disparities within contemporary workforces, how critical is the deliberate preparation of organizations for technological integration? And what is the role of strategic change communication in shaping successful adoption outcomes? Anybody want to jump on that one?
I just spoke, so I was trying to give Doron a bit of space there.
Yeah, it's okay. Let me try. Hopefully I understood. I presume the question behind here relies to the change that needs to be done within an organization to have a successful adoption. Am I understanding?
Yep, exactly.
I think
Exactly.
this is a very important piece here in the puzzle. First of all, when you come, and I presume this relates to Jason's technology as well, when you come with something very new, first of all, you need to educate the market. People in general are in fear of change. Nobody wants to change, and you're coming with something completely different that could change their operational methods, that could change the way they work. And in general, people don't like change. So when you come with a new technology, very unique technology, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, I presume you feel the same as us. We need to educate the market. We need to let them understand why this is helpful for them. So I think there is a gap that you need to overcome in promoting such technologies, and to treat the organization as well, for them to accept such unique technologies. So yeah, I think it's a great question. I think it needs to be addressed. This is what we're trying to do. I presume Jason is doing the same. But yeah, this is part of the puzzle.
So there are a couple things I want to tack on. I'm glad you asked this question. When I saw it initially, it jumped out to me and it spoke to me. And a lot of that, I think, is just I've come from a technology consulting background, and this is trying to help an organization prepare itself to adopt new things is just like, that's like 90% of the work. And so messaging is important. Messaging is one piece of the puzzle. Building a culture of folks at every level who spend a little bit of time looking at the horizon and seeing what's coming, and then trying kind of tagging on to what I was saying before about looking at a tool and saying, how can that tool enable me rather than how might that tool replace me? Leaning forward on that sort of thing. You want to have that sort of culture. Anytime you feel that fear of, oh no, this thing might, replace me, or it might be bad, or it's change and I don't like change. That fear is a signal that you're trying to put a genie back in a bottle. And I think we all know that isn't something that you can actually do and that can actually work. What you're doing is you're delaying the inevitable, and then you're making yourself less prepared to adopt the disruption once everyone else has.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to close this out, frankly. I mean, I think that was a really good 30,000-foot view just of just change, right?
Yeah,
that's
right.
all we're talking about here. That's the whole point of this panel. That's the whole point of this podcast is it's not going to stop. And Jason, I'm 46, so similar to you. It's interesting, your comments earlier, because we are at an age where, we grew up without the internet. We grew up without, my house was full of vinyl records. And then if you just think about that, right, we watched this, it went from vinyl, 8-track was in there somewhere, but it went from vinyl to cassettes to CDs,
right,
to digital downloads, to now people don't even have a wall of music in their home anymore. That storage of music was a big deal. Now that, like, my kids will never see that. And you watched people above us and below us generationally grow up with email versus people like my father, who had to, at a late stage of life, adopt to emailing becoming right. But it's how you accept it and move on, and how you change and use it as a tool. That's how you're going to be successful.
I think, just to add in, I think the new generation, our kids, I think they accept much quicker change compared to us. Okay, again, you said we were. I'm the oldest here. I'm 52, so yeah. So I'm
glad that
older. But no, again, I see my kids. I see how quick they expect they adopt change, and I think as we go down the roads, younger generation will accept change much quicker. So as I presume in a few years' time, we'll probably see change might be that it will move at a quicker pace.
Yeah. And just to be clear, HR has not been notified during the production of this podcast.
Yeah, I love how we all disclose our ages, and I end up being the youngest one in the room. Two positive things from my point. Yeah.
Congrats to you. All right. Well, here's the thing. I think the way to close this out, there's a lot of questions here we didn't get to. There was no way we're going to get to all of them, but there were a lot of very specific product questions to both of you that I didn't want to get to on this podcast. I wanted to stay away from overly commercialization of the questions. And so if people want to ask questions or they have a question that didn't get answered, I believe, Doron, they can find you at RailVision. Is it RailVision.io?
Yeah, it's Doron at RailVision.io.
Perfect. And that's DORON at RailVision.io. Mm-hmm. Or you can find him on the website. I think he's there as well. And then Jason, how about you? Your contact information or easy way to get a hold of you directly?
Yeah. So first off, Xtrack is the product, and it's at Xtrack, XTRACK at .ai. You can reach me through email there. I wish it was just a first name, but it's SCHINDLERJ at extract.ai or objectcomputing.com. The easiest way to get me is really on LinkedIn or something like that. So if you can locate me on LinkedIn, my messages are always open. You can just send me a message, and I'd be happy to connect and chat about whatever you like.
Cool. Well, thank you both for taking the time to be on the panel. Doron wins the longest commute award to get to Indianapolis for that panel. I appreciate that, Doron.
Yeah, it's great fun.
It was really fun. I enjoyed it. Who knows? Maybe we'll have you guys back in a different way, shape, or form in the future, because this isn't going away. And if I learned anything from this particular panel, is it's the Wild Wild West, and it's pretty exciting. So
there's lots of fun stuff to do.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Jason. Doron.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for rolling with AREMA on today's episode of Platform Chats. For further information about AREMA, please visit arema.org or contact us at info@arema.org.